But there is a way for you to get power if you stop that narrative and start with the possibility narrative, the abundance narrative. The opportunity is there for me. I just need to find it. How can I strategically make something out of nothing? Which, in my opinion, is the real American dream. Rich people buying property, they can do that all day long, and that's not going to stop. The people who have the gold make the rules. That's the golden rule, right? So how do I get to a place without attacking them, because we already know that's not a winning proposition, and find my own power in the system that exists already, which there are ways to do. Right now, there are ways to do.
But because the majority of people haven't had financial literacy classes or any education around buying real estate, leveraging real estate, anything around that, you know, instead of looking at it from an empowered standpoint, it's from a disempowered standpoint that looks at it like this unattainable thing that I'll never be able to get. Whereas, you know, and that's
just what I mean.
Yeah, that just like further helps that propaganda land, because now you're talking to people who feel like you're empathizing with them, you know, but you're not telling them how they can join the appreciation, how they can, you know, build the foundation so they don't feel left behind but feel included. That's the real issue.
Yep.
You know?
I will never stand for people feeling stuck in this country of opportunity. We still have it. Let's exploit that.
Yeah. Follow, make that cash. Under all is the land, the real estate. Courtney and friends about to show you how to generate wealth. Get educated, do for yourself. Add a couple notches to your belt. Under all is the land. Under all is the land. The real under all is the land. Under all is the land. The real estate. Coming to you live from ACME Real Estate in Los Angeles, California.
Welcome to Under All is the Land, Season 5, Episode 4. I am your host, Courtney Poulos, here with my rockstar co-stars, Silke Fernald.
Hello.
And Dominique Madden.
Hello.
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 How are you guys today?
Good.
Doing a little walk down memory lane. Talking about the toys we used to play with when we were kids. I saw this thing that said, like, okay, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I mean, my mom, the rule was basically just come home before it gets dark. Like,
pretty much.
My mom had no idea where I was or what I was doing. And a lot of times I wasn't doing anything bad, but I was just doing curious shit, like crawling into dumpsters to see if anybody threw something cool away, or like, you know, hiding in bushes and creating little dens out of stuff I found, or, you know, whatever. But stuff that I'd be like, I'm not going to let my kid do that today, like, on purpose. What did you guys do after school?
I took my bike and I was gone until
What were you
dawn.
doing?
I don't know. Like, we were just driving around the neighborhood, riding on our bikes and meeting at the playground and sitting and chatting. And
what were you talking about?
Boy, I don't know. But
Okay.
it was just like,
Okay.
we went to the play. There was like this little, I remember at the end of our street, there was this like forest you don't go to.
Ooh.
Because I don't know what can happen, and we're like, that's where we're going.
Yep.
With our bikes in that forest. I'm like, this is creepy and cool. We're not supposed to be here.
All the pedophiles live in that
Yeah,
forest.
I mean, I don't know what that was. Like, I don't know. Never met one. Never saw one. It's like, it just this little forest, whatever. They would be
so
like,
funny.
just fun, just things. And
Yeah.
just hang out at the playground and run. Oh my God, went to the bakery. I don't know if you remember, if they have, I don't know if they have that here.
What,
but
they give the
we
kids
had,
a
like,
free
the,
thing?
No, there's
Oh.
like the bakery, and there's like all these like candies on the top, the display, right? And there's all the candies on the top, and you would be like, okay, you had like one mark at
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, okay, 10 of this, one
Yeah.
of this, one of this, and then she would have this little paper, and like it took forever to fulfill the order, right? And there's like kids in line. I'm like, that's her job. So
Yep.
we were like taking the thing and
Penny
like
candy,
eating
they
the whole
called it
freaking
here.
thing. It was just, and the candy that like
That pops in your mouth? Like Pop Rocks?
Pop Rocks,
Yeah.
whatever they called it.
What do they call them in
I
Germany?
have no idea.
What
They
would
might
it
have
be?
called it Pop Rocks. But
Well,
anyway, it was so fun. I love that.
There were ponds near where we lived at different like rental like developments, because I'm from Penn State, where there's just so many places for students to live off campus. There were just tons and tons of these developments. They had little like water features that would get frozen in the winter, and I'd go and ice skate by myself in these little ponds.
I remember doing that
No
too.
fear that I'm gonna fall through at all.
Yeah.
Like all that, and I sold Olympic cards and gifts door to door.
Oh.
Because there were things I wanted that I couldn't afford, and I knew I could do it. I found them in the back of a comic book, like, you can win these prizes if you sell this amount of cards. So I would go door to door, which again is something. If my son was like, "Mom, can I go door to door in LA?" I'd be like, "Oh no, you're not. No, no,
Yeah, you don't
definitely
go anywhere
not.
by yourself.
Let's
here.
circulate that online." But it's a good experience having the door closed in your face when you're 8 years old, you know. But when they wouldn't buy one thing, I'd try and sell them something else. So one time I tried to sell them bookmarks, which I laminated myself with tape, which I'm sure looked hideous.
Horrible.
Horrible looking things, I'm sure,
remember
but only 25 cents.
I
so
remember
how can
something.
you say no?
Yeah.
You know? So it was an
it's true.
emotional.
Yeah.
I was okay, fine. Like the 8-year-old with the self-laminated, she must really need 25 cents.
Yeah.
What was the total made of that from that excursion?
I really
need to
don't
know.
remember. Where it all ended for me was when I decided I was going to make a community newspaper, but I was going to write it by hand. Mom had given me like a big roll of newsprint. And after school every day, I'd try and write gossip blogs. So like I was trying to make it. I had a ruler, and I was like and I think I got through about a page and a half handwritten of like things, and I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
It was like I knew my limitations.
Just
at that
things
point.
were. It was just slower. We did so many more things that
Yeah,
and
but,
things took longer to make, and
the process of thinking
Yes.
was different too. And I saw this post by Sophia Amoroso on from Girl Boss on Instagram, and she's like, these are the things I wish I would have learned in school. And it's like basic stuff, but I wonder, how much how we are prepared to teach our kids the stuff they're going to need to know in the future. You can't really predict. All I know is that lack of stuff when I was little made me creative, and it made me feel like if I wanted something, I really had to work for it.
Yeah.
Which we admire in American society, like good work ethic, but I don't know that it taught me to work smarter. I think I had to burn out a few times before I figured out, okay, I should use my brain more and
it was definitely more
my
like
time
a work
less.
harder, not smarter time.
yeah.
But
Totally.
did you record the top 10 on like your tape thing? Did you
Yes.
ever?
I mean, I
Okay,
recorded the
remember
songs that I
sitting there
liked.
that was
Yeah.
so fun. Every Friday they were like,
And we had a
top 10.
microphone that plugged into the tape deck. So I'd go in the room, I'd put on my mom's clothes, including her heels, and I'd stand in the mirror with the microphone, and I'd go, "This is Courtney reporting live from blah blah blah." And I pretended I was a news broker, and I would a news anchor, and I would record it, and then play it back. I'd read the newspaper that way. I did a lot of things when I was young
is so
with
fun.
boredom. What'd you do?
Well, I thought I was a forensic investigator, so
Ooh.
I was always trying to find some shit to put under a microscope.
You know
That's
what?
cool.
That relates to real estate. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And I thought I was a spy, so I also was taking down neighborhood gossip in my
Of
little journal
course.
and reporting it on my walk girl, or what was it? Talk girl, whatever.
Like the little Walkman.
But it was like no. It was
But you
like,
had a microphone.
Okay, on Home Alone, the little thing he walks around and talks into.
Yes.
It was
Didn't
one of
have
those.
that. Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
I think it was called a Talkman or Talk Girl, but there was a boy and a girl version.
Okay.
And I had the girl version. And anyway, it was so fun, and I loved it so much. And we just like hide out wherever and then watch like all the older teenagers and what they were doing and report on that.
Yes. I see 16-year-olds smoking cigarettes over there behind the dumpster.
or like just get into stuff generally, like what can we find to do, like this I mean, we were from the safest town literally ever.
Right.
But there was one girl who went missing one Halloween. Yeah, she went missing.
Oh.
Did she return?
Her name was Cindy Song.
No,
She
did
never
not
she was
return.
never found.
Oh
No.
my God.
And she was a Penn State student, right?
She was a Penn State student. She was like out at a party, and that night she went missing. So like the next, like whenever this came up, I don't even know if it was really the next day, but once it came out, my friends and I are like, well, we're going to find her, So we're like going around the apartment complex that she, was in, that was right behind us, right? And like finding little clues like tomatoes that were on the ground. We're like, she must have been carrying these tomatoes. They're spread all over the sidewalk. It looks like she's headed in this direction,
Oh, wow. Oh my God, love that.
Yeah, you created your fun back then,
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Isn't there this commercial? Sean was telling me there was a commercial in the 80s around 10 or 9 o'clock where the
Oh my
TV
God,
said, "Do you know where your children are?"
Yeah. Yeah, it
like
did.
because parents had no clue.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is your reminder. It's dark. Maybe you want to see that they're
Yeah,
home.
maybe you should check and
I
make
was
sure you know
cracking
where your
up when I heard
your
that.
children are.
Yeah.
Yep,
That
it's
is
true.
so funny. We didn't have that in Germany, but I love that.
Yeah,
That is so
that
funny.
they did have that.
Can you imagine?
That is true. It's fun to walk down memory lane sometimes, just to remind us how we got here. And things are constantly changing. One of the things that we talked about on our last episode were the changes around financing of ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and California laws around how they can be resold and subdivided. ADUs have been around for a few years, but we're still investigating the value of them from a resale point of view, like which is better, the garage or the ADU, and really what the future value of them will be, because as housing is a commodity. It's like having additional space on your property becomes a value, you would think. So here to break down all things ADU is Jackie Vaisman of Go ADU Construction. Welcome, Jackie.
Woo.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here because we have lots of questions for you around ADUs. So you are in construction and you build, and this is your own company too, right?
Correct. I have it with my husband. We've been doing this for a while, and we really are very passionate about the ADU business.
What is it that makes you so passionate? Why do you love it?
So, because it really changed my life. Like, not to sound super cheesy or anything, but I'll just go there. We built our first ADU in 2017. And the idea was when we bought our first house, we really wanted to build a guest house to subsidize our mortgage. So we bought sort of like at the top. We pulled like every penny that we could find to buy at the top of our budget, knowing that we were going to make this investment and have it pay off in the long run. And financially, it really saved us. It worked out. I mean, we cover the majority of our mortgage with the ADU. So I'm like
still to this day.
Yeah, especially when the interest rates were really low and we refinanced. So I'm like super gung-ho about them.
Yep.
Did you convert your garage or did you add an extra structure?
We converted the garage. So that was part of it. We got lucky because the garage was partially converted. So we had electricity already and water, which saved us a lot of money when we did it.
That's actually a really important question because a lot of times when we're selling real estate, we see garage conversions that were done without permits probably years and years ago when maybe they weren't even needed or people just they weren't trying to convert them into ADUs, let's say, legally. It was just kind of like bonus space. So you can still work with that. You don't have to redo everything whenever there's electricity that goes out to that
Correct.
structure, for example.
Absolutely, yeah. And depending on what the work is that's done, it can really save the person a lot of money because, yeah, exactly. You can work with what's there already in many cases.
What's the cheapest ADU you've ever done?
The cheapest, well, the question is it before the price increases around 2020, 2021 of raw materials or after? Because it's like a really night and day.
Well,
Okay,
how
let's talk
has it
about
changed? Like how bad?
I mean,
Is it
I
now?
can tell you just in full transparency because I believe in being super transparent with prices. Like before 2020, we could probably build an ADU for around 70K, let's say. That would be on the cheaper side of like maybe a studio or one bedroom.
And build, you mean build from scratch or convert?
Convert.
Okay, got it.
And now it's, significantly more. It's about, our prices are around between $250 to $350 per square foot, depending on,
Finishes and
Exactly. I think that's a real key. And depending on what the main house already has, if they have an upgraded electrical panel that we can use to help power the ADU. But overall, I like to give that range as sort of a general.
So the ADU doesn't need its own electrical panel?
No, not necessarily. What
Okay.
we've done in the past is we'll get like a splitter. So you can actually, in some cases, track if you have tenants, right? You can track how much is
They're
being used by the
spending.
front and how much is being used by the back.
Right. So you do new construction of ADUs as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We specialize in garage conversions, but we're seeing more and more people want new constructions, even if they don't have, like let's say they have an attached garage, but they want a detached space for like an office or a rental. We're starting to see that more and more.
And how is the pricing for those?
It is on the upper end because you're not taking advantage of the existing structure.
So it's still in the $350 per square foot or higher?
Yeah, it's more in the $350 range.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like people ask us all the time what's more valuable, the garage or the ADU, and if it costs how much does it, like, say it's a 450 square foot garage, right? That's like a 2-car garage, right?
Yeah.
So how much would that cost versus building it new in real dollars?
In real dollars?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're looking at about, if you're converting the garage, it's so hard.
I know this isn't a science. I just mean, like, is it 150 to convert and 350 to build new, or?
It just, also from real estate, it depends so much on, like, what's the nature of the property. You know what I mean? Like, is it on a hill? Is it sloped? Is it, like, it's so variable. But that's why I always just try and give a general range. And then once we go out and scout the property.
Well, we talked about the price per square foot, but we didn't talk about, like, if it was 450 square feet or 400 square feet, what that actually equates to in real dollars and cents. 120 to 140 for a conversion, roughly.
And we work with all budgets. So we also have a project going right now that's, just under 100. So it really depends on, like, people's preferences. That's why I'm always a little bit hesitant, but I know people want a number. So.
They do. They want to know because, we want to know.
So are you a contractor, or do you help with the process?
Okay, let me be my husband's the licensed contractor.
Okay, cool.
So, but I'm very familiar with the building process because when we did our first ADU, which was for ourselves, we did it as owner builders. It was before he had his license. So it was he and I just, like, in the trenches, going to the city, dealing with the architect, dealing with, like, the subs, dealing with all of this stuff. So we learned we became intimately acquainted with the process. And then when we would have people over in our backyard, they would ask us a lot of questions about the ADU, and so we would sort of come on as, like, an unofficial consultant. So we got a lot of experience that way, and then my husband went and he made it official. He put a ring on it, he got licensed, and then the rest is history. Yeah.
Okay, so and do you have
Do
you have long-term tenants in there, or is it in?
That's a good question. As far, like, since we built it, are they the same tenants?
No, just in general. Do you usually
versus,
have
like,
the
a
same
short-term?
person, or is it like 2 nights here, 4 nights there?
We usually do for our tenants they'll sign a year contract. We've had them, different, maybe about 3 or 4 tenants since we built it. They tend to, I don't know if you see this in your experience, because I know you also do rentals, but I do think the ADU has a lot more value for people who have pets, for example, than, like, renting an apartment
100%.
building. So you see that people want to stay longer, in my experience, as a rental unit with ADUs. But yeah, we've had several in our own personal ADU.
Well, definitely over the pandemic, people found a lot of values in the ADUs because they're set apart. So instead of being in one of those big buildings where you're worried about how many people you were around, especially then, we saw a lot of people moving to smaller buildings.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a huge, like, the whole sort of safety consideration of not having to share an elevator with people when you're, going downstairs and stuff. And I found that the pet factor is really, as long as the owner of the ADU is okay with pets, that's, like, you can create, like, a garden for them. They can have space for their animals, or, like, it's a sweet like, living deal if you can get into one.
Is there a big difference between building in LA City versus LA County?
There are, like, slight differences, but overall I think
similar.
Especially since a lot of the ordinances were passed sort of on the state level. So
right.
I haven't really encountered some huge glaring differences between both.
And now they have the pre-approved plans, right? So let's talk about that.
I'm very excited about that because that's one of the biggest questions that clients have is, like, how long is this process going to take me? They're eager to get it started.
Yep.
And, there's a lot of, like, one of the main things that's out of your control in this business is what happens once you submit things to the city.
Ain't that the truth? Say that again. Say it one more time.
With the people in the back.
Yes, say it.
Seriously, it's out of your hands. And so there's one plan that the city of Los Angeles has. This is sort of a caveat to your question. There's one plan that you can use free of charge. It's a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom ADU. And you can use those plans without having to pay. There's about 15 other ones that are on the website. They're all pre-approved, but you have to pay. I don't know if it's technically called, like,
a licensing
fee or something like that, but it's a solid. It'll raise the cost. It's I don't remember.
I looked into
this. City council member's wife is the architect on those ones you have to pay for.
You know what? I actually looked into this, and actually they're submitted by they're different architects. Like, people can submit these things. I don't know how they are chosen to be part of that umbrella, but they're not cheap. Yeah, they're expensive.
What are we talking
for you
about?
to get the
Give me numbers. 5 digits.
I reached out.
Yeah, 5 digits.
Yeah, I reached out to someone to see, they had a really nice floor plan. I was like, this is actually perfect for what I'd like. And I think it was like $40K.
For the floor plan?
For the you have
Plans, the
approved
approved
plans.
plans.
For the plan.
Yeah.
So if you didn't use one of those pre-approved plans,
Yeah.
how much would plans typically cost? Like just the architectural plans and submission process, just generally.
You working with the architect, it depends on what the person wants and how many revisions they want, because that's like how many back and forth rounds. But I would say let's say around plus or minus 30%. It could be around 10K, let's say.
So the plans online could even be more expensive than just finding your own architect and doing.
But because they're
They're
Ready,
pre-approved and you're
pre-approved.
paying for the premium, not having to wait.
Right. Oh, right.
So they're
that's the
stamped and you
time
start breaking
savings.
ground once you buy these plans?
What's that?
You start breaking ground once you start the
There
project.
are-
I've never
Yeah.
used them, to be totally honest. We've only worked
Yeah.
with architects.
Okay.
So, but
Okay.
in theory, that
So
exactly
they're
right.
basically stamped up.
wow.
Okay.
But you know that is interesting that they
Yeah.
have a free one
They have one
that people can use, because that means that if you're down with that floor plan, then you can expedite your ADU process so much.
Right, which
That's
actually
crazy.
makes sense for a lot of developers
Yeah.
since they're so crunched on their timelines. So no more excuses, developers.
Seriously.
But the
Because they
city
say,
will,
"Oh, I was going to convert the ADU, but because of the timeline."
Yeah.
Although
but the city
no.
would still have to come out though, right, to make sure that what you're trying to do is actually
according to
doable.
the plans.
Right,
right.
Absolutely, yeah.
so that your
Right.
setback is right and
Exactly, and
all
let
that.
since we do mostly garage conversions, those plans, if I'm not mistaken, are only for new constructions. They're not
Oh,
for garage
okay.
conversions. So that might be.
Oh.
Don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure, because when I've looked into it quite a bit, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
I would say the majority of the inquiries I get from my clients are around converting the garage. Because I think, and I've said it before, but there may be data to support this. I just forget where I got the information from many years ago. But backyards and garages are the most overvalued and underused features of real estate. So people are like, I want a huge yard, but they don't ever use their yard. Or they'll say like, I need a 2-car garage, but they park in the driveway. Why? Because when you're bringing groceries in, if you have a detached garage that's in the back of your property, you're not going to park in it and haul your groceries up to the front. Haul. You're going to do the shortest distance between 2 points, which tends to be right beside the door.
I
Wherever
totally
that is.
agree with
I'm
you.
just picturing you hurling
Hurl.
groceries. Take the milk.
Fucking gross. I was thinking like a pulley system could be cool, you just get them out of the car, put them on a thing, and like do, and they end up in the kitchen.
I'm just gonna line up my elves.
Oh my God. I'm on a hill, I have a steep hill. So for me, parking in the driveway and like bringing the groceries in is like a thing. It's like I'm like walking up the hill with heavy bags.
That's
and
cardio. That counts.
it does count. It totally counts. That's why I've got this apple booty. Yeah. Well, I'm working on it. Anyway, I digress. Let's not talk about my butt.
But I do agree with you, and I would add to that, even like a pool is something, in my experience. I mean, I haven't owned very many homes, but it's like, pools are one of those things that in theory, I'm always like, oh, I'm going to use it every day. I'm going to swim laps, and I'm going to like get so in shape, and I'm going to probably
then you
use
don't.
it like I can count on 2 hands how many times a year I use it.
It's true.
Even in LA where it's
true.
so warm and sunny.
It is true. There's like a country club that you can be on the wait list to join, and I think when I first moved there, it was like $10,000 or $15,000 for a lifetime membership, and then you have like a minimum amount you have to spend every month. And I was like, well, that's so expensive, And I had a pool, so we just have always use a pool. Now the price of membership has gone up way more, but still, I'm trying to build a pool in my backyard, and still the cost of membership is hundreds of thousands of dollars less than the cost to actually build a pool.
No way.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of dollars less. And for me, I'm going on like year 3 of trying to get this thing done. So definitely, pools have value for resale. They don't get used very much, but there is a value in the resale. And I think garages, same thing, and backyards, same thing. But if you actually have a functioning ADU, it allows you to leverage your asset up into the next part of your real estate journey. So for me, ADUs are most valuable for first-time homebuyers to do just what you said. Make sure you're hedging against any economic changes, that you always have somebody supplementing your mortgage. It gives you flexibility. You can do Airbnb or you can do long-term tenants. You have these choices. But as you move up, then it turns your 1 unit into a 2-unit property. So there's the value right there. You can make even more money on it the longer you hold it.
Well, and it's so hard to get into the market in Los Angeles. So it's like any way that you can supplement reduce your mortgage payments is welcomed. And I did hear what you were saying before I walked in, because the new sort of underwriting laws as far as considering the rental income from an ADU as part of the underwriting, which before was not the case. It was only multifamilies, right, that were
that is
part of that. And that I think is going to be, that's a
huge
huge game changer, because
huge.
Yeah, I always think about ADUs in this way. Like, you're not building, in some cases with some of these 1,200 square foot ADUs, you're building a house. You're not just converting a garage. You are building a house, and you're getting, the value makes sense because you're not paying for the land. And that's really so expensive in LA. So it's like, is sort of an average cost per square foot for a home, including the land in LA? Is it fair to say $500 to $1,000 per square foot?
That depends what
depends
area,
where
but
it is.
The
rule of, I always say price per square foot is a terrible way of looking at real estate, not to just say that. There are places where you can buy land. The usability of the land is a big part of the value in LA. People want to live in the hills. The hills are difficult to build in. The price of the land is cheaper, but the cost of the construction is higher. So in the flats, you'll get the land for more expensive because it's flat and ready to build. So, a lot in the Hollywood Hills could be a couple $100,000, and you're like, wow, this place has amazing views, but it's going to take you 15 years to get through Department of Building and Safety to do all the engineering you need to do to have a structure on that hill. Whereas you could say, wow, $500,000 for $500,000 for a 4,000 square foot lot in Atwater seems high, but if you can build on that thing in 1 year, you can sell something for profit, very easily. So land is a funny thing, but yeah. So there's no real, but price per square foot, you have to make sure when you're using that as a metric that you're using apples to apples. So if you're comparing price per square foot on houses, for example, like an average resale price of a house, you have to make sure it's exactly the same square footage, because obviously the smaller the square footage, the higher the price per square foot, and it's in the exact same location, like it's in Los Feliz in the same couple of blocks, that they have the same kind of neighborhood conditions, school districts, all that stuff.
Same condition.
Same condition.
Finishes,
Same condition.
Yeah, aesthetic level. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always it's like the scientists, like the in football they have, what do they call them? Armchair quarterbacks or something. But it feels like that with people who use price per square foot when they're trying to compare houses. You can go this way or that way. Whatever case you want to make. Now that's just an educational seminar for the people out there, not to make any point about you being wrong about anything.
No, but I'm not a real estate agent, so I appreciate the education, I'm not going to lie. But I will say that, going back to what you were saying about the price per square foot, that that's how we sort of look at the value of an ADU is looking at what's the value of your home per square foot. I'm curious to know all of your thoughts if you think this is a fair way to look at it. And then whatever you're building as far as livable space goes with this garage conversion or ADU, that's more or less the value that it would have? Or is it more or less because is it more because it's a multi-unit, or is it less because it's, how do you...
I wouldn't say that it adds the same value as price per square foot.
In the main house.
In the main house, yeah, for sure.
It doesn't.
I would say, it's really hard to say. It's really hard to quantify that because it also depends on where it is. Even valuing an ADU, right? Some people want a place to park. So they don't necessarily need a garage, but they need a driveway. Maybe they need a private parking, so they need a gate. So if they have an ADU, but they have no driveway and no gate, now that ADU actually just made that
liability.
It could now be a liability. Whereas if there's a great driveway and they have somewhere to park, then now this ADU is great. That could be an awesome option because now we've got these other options, but now we've got this income. So it really depends. It depends on the property.
That's very interesting.
Yes. But I do think one of the things about accessory dwelling units that is not true of guest houses and not true of permitted rec rooms and all these other pre-ADU things that were legal living square footage is that it appears on your tax record as combined square footage. The previous things, even legal guest houses, did not appear on the tax record as living square footage. So whenever you're comparing price per square foot from a metric data point of view, you will see combined square footages for the main house and the guest house. But in reality, who sets the value? Buyers set the value. And they will never value the accessories square footage more than the one that they primarily like live in. You know?
I mean, that makes total sense because, yeah, at the end of the day, it's like like you said, there's the main house and then there's the back house.
Right. And if you have like a, say, 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses are the typical like bare minimum for most people who have people living in the house that are going to be 2+, So 2-2 works for 2, 3-2 is like the minimum for anybody that's, say, expanding a family or wants to have roommates or whatever. And then, the bonus structure in this post-COVID world has so many purposes.
Totally.
That to me is the real value. It's not in the structure. It's in the multiple options for use.
Totally.
It's work from home. It's guest space. It's rental income. It's the place where I do ballet, whatever.
Well, and it's so funny that you say that because we had clients that when they bought their house, the detached garage was converted into sort of a bonus room. It was just very beautiful. They're like, oh, it's going to be a playroom for our kid. But then they realized they were sort of leaving money on the table by not having like a fully functional ADU. Whether or not they chose to use it that way is a different story. But
right.
Knowing that they have the option, so we ended up helping them build out their, turning it into an actual converted ADU that so they can use it as an office or as a play space for their kid. But if down the line, if things get hard financially, they can rent it out. Yeah,
exactly.
And that's the other advice I had. A friend actually who enlisted my help, and they were about to buy a house and they had the garage and they're like, well, how much is it going to cost us to do a bonus room versus an ADU? And I was like, look, and I hope this doesn't come off as biased, but like my professional recommendation is just, if you can't do it now, just wait and do the ADU later, because you don't want to pay for a bonus room
right.
and then change your mind and have to kind of start. You don't start from zero, but you do lose a lot of time and money. So I just said it's better to do nothing, in my opinion, than cut yourself off from the option of using this as a potential rental stream in the future, knowing how expensive LA is.
Mm-hmm. So we have some laws in California related to ADUs.
We do.
That people are trying to decipher. So we'd love your point of view on SB 9.
Absolutely.
Tell us what you think.
So, I mean, for anyone who's listening, SB 9 essentially allows, just, giving it the simplest explanation possible, you take a lot, you divide it into 2, and because of the ADU ordinance that passed in the state of California in 2017 that allowed 2 units on each lot, you can technically have 4 units. You can, let's say, have your main house and an ADU and then maybe 2 other units on the other lot. So that is sort of the spirit of the law. I think, from my understanding, it hasn't been wildly successful in the same way that, building ADUs has been wildly successful in California. And I'm curious to see if what happens, well, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself with AB 1033, but
right.
what happens once that comes into effect. But that's the gist of it, is that
right.
you can subdivide.
You can subdivide your land, you can build additional units on it, and this is like a solution to the housing crisis, which is arguably a different crisis, but anyway. And then AB 1033 says, now that you built this thing and you subdivided this thing, now you can sell it as a condo.
Exactly. And that, one of the instances that I've spoken to, lenders and people sort of in the industry and how they see this coming to life, since it hasn't actually taken effect yet. But one example is, the older couple that they bought their house in 1980, they retired, they're living on really, low Social Security or
like
retirement.
a fixed income.
Exactly. It's not enough to get by. And so what they could do is build an ADU, either move into the back, and if they want to sell the front house, they can, or sell it off to people who are looking to get into the real estate market but have been priced out. So that's one interesting, I think, example of it. The research that I've done has said that one person said they foresee really selling it at the beginning to family members, and close friends.
That's interesting.
That is
Yeah,
very interesting.
Like I have a son who hasn't been able to afford a house, so I'm going to build this ADU, sell it to him, so he gets in.
He gets in, and he also gets the tax benefits of mortgage interest deduction. And if in LA you want your kid to have that, but he can't independently afford to buy something because the prices are high, I never thought of that.
It was
that's
I didn't think of it either.
That's
to be fair.
interesting.
Yeah, it was because there is there's a lot of questions of like, what is it going to look like to be in essentially an HOA with people, right?
Yeah,
like,
with other people. Yeah.
so that's one way, is like a close friend or a family member you could sell it to in order to sort of get their foot in the door.
So the lender on the last episode thought maybe the whole condominium ownership was going to be rethought, because condominiums come with a whole set of rules as far as reselling those loans on the secondary mortgage market, that having an HOA that's tied to the neighbor, it's like a little bit weird. It's like doesn't quite fit in with the current way we resell loans. So it could become a specialty lending kind of a thing, more like TICs or tenants in common.
Yes, exactly.
So personally, I think it's a better idea, especially if you're going to sell it to somebody that's a family member, which is a great option for building legacy wealth. I love that. Is to just make it a regular resale, like a structure on land where the land comes with it, and lose the whole condo thing. I just don't know who wins with the condo thing.
It is.
Seems like more difficult to finance, more difficult to resell, and you have to create an HOA with people who ultimately might end up being like neighbors in the front yard that you have no relationship with because your parents are going to move.
But then you probably have to create a second APN number for each land has its own.
It does have its own APN number, though. That's what she's saying, is that SB 9 allows you to subdivide the land,
Right.
build the structures, and then the condo is the way you resell the structure, right?
That's how I understood it as well. Exactly.
So it does have a separate APN. Why the HOA ties the two together is because you're living on essentially what once was the same lot.
Right.
But under normal, so maybe there's access, there's easements that have
That's
to
what I
go
was
across
saying.
the
Your title
property.
will be complicated.
It will be
Egress and
ridiculous.
regress, and what if you want to put a fence? And then, well, there's this fence now, but you can't do it because it's a different land and owned by somebody else.
Right. So the HOA agreement would allow people to decide how they want to address those access issues and have it be this established recorded document, and then that document goes with the property. We used to do that with deed restrictions, like covenants.
It runs with the land.
It runs with the land. So if there's a permission for access or a fence to be built or a yard to be divided, that could all be on the deed. I'm thinking that that's why they wanted it to be an HOA kind of a thing, because then you can decide, okay, we are deciding right now one dog, per house, or one dog for this back area, something, because you're living on the same land. It's just, it has all kinds of things about it that could be weird.
I mean, but your take on it makes a lot of sense, actually, that's the purpose of it. Because I've asked myself the same question too, and I haven't really come to any sort of conclusions. But that makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
Yeah. So people out there, it seems like good business to create this condo process management firm right now, because it's going to be a shit show. Somebody's going to need to pay for those services. Anybody want to go into business? DM us. What would your concerns be about subdividing the land and creating a sellable ADU on its own land?
Just the closeness of it all, and then you have to walk, because the garages sit at the back of the property, and then you walk past somebody's kitchen window to get to your house.
See, but I feel like
And
you
it's
walk
sort of
past
like-
people's houses
well,
to get to your house.
But
in
you
neighborhoods
don't, not
anyway.
like that. It's
intimate.
close.
It's
It's close.
intimate.
Somebody opens their backyard, their door to the backyard, and you see they're sitting on the couch or whatever, and then you come out of your ADU and you're like, hey, what's up?
Right, neighbor?
What are you watching on TV?
But again,
You
your
know, it's
neighbors
very
next
close.
door.
It's communal, but it's different because when you're in a building, you're still it's separated.
A lot of times there's a fence dividing.
You're not.
I'm saying even in neighborhoods that are
looking
high
into
density, you can look in your kitchen. I sell so many houses where I'm standing at the kitchen. Like, I think a lot of houses that were built in like the 30s have kitchens that face the neighbor's property.
Yes.
Standing in the
Yes,
kitchen,
of
looking in the bedroom window of the
Yeah,
neighbors.
but there's a fence.
Yeah, but the fence law says you can only build the fence, 6 feet?
And you know,
Well,
that
there's not always
if
a
when the
fence.
neighbors agree, you can put toppers on and make it as tall as you want
You
to.
can, but people
But-
don't. I'm just saying you could do the same thing here.
Well, where do you put your fence if you have to use the driveway to get to your ADU?
You would have the driveway, you'd have your parking, and then you'd enter through a tall fence, and you'd go into the back, and you create whatever privacy you need. I'm not
guess
saying
you
it's
could.
ideal.
Well,
It's a
you know,
starter home
I know.
situation, no
We're
matter
just
what.
bitching about
but
it.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like,
Yeah.
I can see possibilities where it could be something.
Sure.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
Better than a condo for people that have pets, like, for example.
Oh,
or,
yeah.
I mean,
of
it creates
course.
a lot of opportunity, but like one of the things that people are most up in arms about it, right, is that it does take single family streets that are otherwise not as high density and turns them into streets that are higher density.
Right.
You know, and
Cars and
people who are
parking.
looking for single families rather than condos, which we do get a lot of buyers who are specifically looking for single families, not duplexes, triplexes, condos, you know, they're looking for that suburban street quality that isn't high density. So I think that that's one of the things that's going to complicate this is all the people who are really frustrated by the streets density changing.
It's doubling the car.
And another
You have
thing
to
that
have
I
a
think
parking space.
I was
Doubling
going to
the
say
car
another
you.
thing that's concerning is
Although you don't, if you're within a half mile of public transport.
exactly.
Yes.
So that's another thing is the lack of parking. We already have such a parking issue. I could
Yeah.
see that being a huge thing
Yeah.
once people are actually putting 4 properties on each lot.
Gosh, and imagine 2 adults. That's 2 cars. That's 8 cars
Right.
per
Yeah.
parcel. Or
Yeah.
And they don't build much parking. They build a lot of
They don't do
apartments, but
street
they don't build
parking.
much parking.
That is so
And it's
true.
definitely not free parking either. So
yeah.
Yeah.
That's another business idea. Is how can we solve for the parking, issues in the city with, I know like in some
We
places.
stack it and do the fancy.
I have one of those lift things, hydraulic lifts, remember, at the Detroit house? Do you remember it? And it was terrifying. I'm
sure
Just
it is.
FYI.
Yeah.
Terrifying to have a big car on top of you.
Yeah. And it's and moving up and down, right?
Yeah, and I scratched the crap out of my car trying to get in and out of that thing. Yeah, I don't like those hydraulic lift things.
That's
Good
because if it
intention,
malfunctions,
bad-
We
Like,
need
it
to
needs to be
underground
wired.
parking or something. We need to go.
They have people that are doing like where you can rent people's driveways and stuff. You
Oh, I
pay
mean, that's
like
just-
it's like
it's just-
it's opening a whole nother
In
door.
DC, the parking spaces are separately deeded.
what?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Peep this. People buy parking spaces as investments.
That is wild.
Yep. And so people who live in houses that were built with no parking, because a lot of DC was built in like 1800s or like early 1900s, where not everybody had a car. So literally there's no driveway, nowhere to even put a car. It's just like a thing. They buy a separate parking space from a neighboring condo building or whatever that has a separate deed.
Wow. You know what? In the UK, I don't know about whether or not they're separately deeded, but there's so little parking in several of the cities that like they have those apps where it's like you can book someone's parking space, very easily. Like you can book their driveway space very easily for however long. You choose the hour count, and it's very
I
interesting.
wonder what's going to get you more monthly rent. The rental parking space or the ADU? Like in some neighborhoods, like I lived in Koreatown, parking, impossible. Impossible. Terrifying, in fact. Like I'm like parking like down creepy streets that have no lighting, and I'd have to jump out and run. My car got almost stolen multiple times. Like the first people who tried to steal it messed it up so much that the second people who tried to steal it, all they got were my bags of CDs, which I'm sure those aren't very valuable now. I had some demos, some songs I can never get back, but they just broke some windows and messed up the transmission. But anyway, terrifying. I wish I would have had parking or a way to rent somebody's spot,
Yeah, so that's something to consider when people are developing is like, where are people going to park,
Yeah.
And I think you're right. And it's such a hard question to answer because they are valid, super valid points. So it's like, and then it's like you think about the housing crisis as well. And the same time, it just feels like there's no.
But
Well,
okay,
this is a thing.
housing
Yeah,
crisis.
we can talk about that. We can talk about that.
You pulled the thing out of the hand grenade. So
Is there housing?
This is
go.
something we talk about a
Let's
lot
go.
because, quite frankly, this is something that is propagandized so much.
Yes.
But there are many spaces and places that are currently vacant because what's being built is so unaffordable that there aren't tenants, filling it. But also, in at least LA specifically, the housing crisis has also been tied into the
homelessness
homeless problem.
crisis.
Whereas when you really live in the depths of the, places that are more affected by homelessness, you see that it's less about housing, because if you talk to these people, they're not looking to be housed. They enjoy their freedom. Many of them, a lot of people actually, really it comes down to like a mental health thing, right?
Or
Which is
drug
what the city
problem
should
thing.
be focusing on, is solving the mental health crisis, but then also the drug crisis.
Right.
Because that's another thing, is that even if they're, mentally healthy otherwise, but on drugs, a lot of them have offers for housing, but refuse them because it also requires them to be clean. So
Yes.
Goes like hand in
Wait,
hand.
like fundamentally, there is no American right. Like, it's not like it's a right to live wherever you want at whatever price you feel you should pay. Like, I can't be like, it's my right to live in the Beverly Hills flats. It's my right. No, it is, because I want to, for $500. That's what I want. No, it's supply and demand. It's a market just like anything else.
it's true.
And the beautiful thing about real estate is if you start without making excuses. Look, this is where I am. I don't have shit. I don't have any money. Like I did. I figured out a way to get a very tiny place and then turn the tiny place into 2-bedroom apartment condo that I would prefer a big house, but this is what I can afford. And then turn that thing into another thing and work and do it. You can do it.
It's so true.
It's crazy. You can have it. You
Even-
can do it.
even
But it's
with-
not your right.
Even with these ADU, with these ADU laws, right? It's like, people who want to take an asset and turn it into, a foundation, they have options. You have options, of course I would have loved to live in Baldwin Hills whenever I bought my house, but I could not afford Baldwin Hills, which was not even as pricey as it is right now, but what I did was I bought a house that was much more affordable, and I took out a renovation loan. I did it wasn't an FHA version, but it was a conventional version where it wrapped the financing of the reno that I otherwise would not have been able to pay for into the renovation. And, and now I have something that actually I have equity in, and I can use that. And actually, I just got my ADU plans approved, and I'm going to take that equity and build that ADU so that now I have something that can produce income. And that's something that people can do. They just have to find a space to get into it.
Right.
We're from Pennsylvania. We just got a property in Pennsylvania. That's a great property and a very digestible price point, But if you look at the rents there too, there are some super affordable. You are paying probably a sixth of what you would pay here for the same space. Wow. Your 1-bedroom apartment might be $600 instead of $3,000, in that new building here. But, that's possible too. So if you honestly cannot afford the city that you're in, explore other options, explore investing in other options.
Right.
Go buy a condo in Miami and rent it out. Those are $200,000, $300,000 depending on where you're looking, or in Ohio where you might be able to pick it up for $100,000. There are options. It's just that people don't like to explore their options and want what they want.
Also,
For
well
what they want
said.
for.
Well, it's
Well
also, yes, but I think it's also a scary move to be buying somewhere where you don't live, where you feel like I'm nowhere near there if something's happening. What do I do? Right?
You have a property management company.
No,
Come
I'm
on,
just
talk to a realtor.
Excuses.
I think so too. But here's the other thing that's been recently seriously weaponized from a propaganda point of view is like there are the oppressors and there are the oppressed, and this is happening in politics. It's happening with our wars that are happening. It's like, okay, we understand that there are people who have power and there are people who do not. But there is a way for you to get power if you stop that narrative and start with the possibility narrative, the abundance narrative. The opportunity is there for me. I just need to find it. How can I strategically make something out of nothing? Which, in my opinion, is the real American dream. Rich people buying property, they can do that all day long, and that's not going to stop. The people who have the gold make the rules. That's the golden rule, right? So how do I get to a place without attacking them, because we already know that's not a winning proposition, and find my own power in the system that exists already, which there are ways to do. Right now, there are ways to do.
But because the majority of people haven't had financial literacy classes or any education around buying real estate, leveraging real estate, anything around that, instead of looking at it from an empowered standpoint, it's from a disempowered standpoint that looks at it like this unattainable thing that I'll never be able to get. Whereas, you know, and that's
just
what
I mean.
Yeah, that just like further helps that propaganda land, because now you're talking to people who feel like you're empathizing with them, you know, but you're not telling them how they can join the appreciation, how they can, you know, build the foundation so they don't feel left behind but feel included. That's the real issue.
Yep.
You know?
I will never stand for people feeling stuck in this country of opportunity. We still have it. Let's exploit that. So if you want, it's a mindset thing too, I think. Yeah. So ADUs could be part of that.
I feel very inspired right now. I'm like, wow, where do I sign? Like, so powerful. Build your ADUs. Seriously, I'm like, I want whatever you guys are drinking. Like, that's nice.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. That does it for another episode of Under All Is the Land. We'll see you next time. Toodles.
Bye.
Under all